Welcome back to the 1% Mind. Today, we continue our deep dive into Phase 2, financial psychology, by identifying the invisible barrier to wealth. Imagine sitting across the desk from a highly intelligent, deeply conservative professional. They did everything society told them to do. They went to a good school, secured a high-paying job, and over the last 10 years, they aggressively saved a war chest of $200,000. But every single penny of that capital is sitting in a standard, low-yield savings account at a traditional bank. When you ask them why they aren't deploying this capital into index funds or real estate, they look at you as if you are insane. They say the market is too volatile, and they worked entirely too hard to watch their money disappear on a screen. They feel incredibly responsible. They believe they are outsmarting the system by playing defense, but they are completely blind to a relentless, invisible predator: inflation. This bank UI shows the mathematical reality. By refusing calculated risk, they guarantee a massive, permanent loss. While money sits safely in cash, inflation is quietly vaporizing its purchasing power. 10 years from now, that $200,000 will buy half as much. They are actively choosing a 100% guarantee of slowly bleeding to death, entirely to avoid a 20% chance of a temporary scratch. This is the biological glitch we are identifying today. To understand why you are terrified of financial risk, we have to look at the psychological research of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. They discovered a mechanical flaw in the human operating system by offering people a simple, straightforward coin flip. The bet works exactly like this. I have a perfectly fair coin. If it lands on tails, you pay me $1,000. But if it lands on heads, I pay you $1,500. From a purely logical perspective, this is a lucrative opportunity. The mathematical expected value of this bet is positive $250. If you ran this through a supercomputer, the algorithm would take the bet instantly and repeatedly, because over many flips, you walk away wealthy. But when Kahneman and Tversky offered this exact bet to human subjects, the vast majority of people aggressively rejected it. The researchers discovered that the human brain does not process numbers. It processes emotions. Specifically, the psychological pain of losing is approximately twice as intense as the biological joy of gaining. This phenomenon is known as loss aversion. Your brain is strictly wired to prevent you from losing the resources you already possess. It is not wired to make you wealthy. To understand why this mechanism exists, we have to travel back to the brutal environment where your brain was originally engineered, the primal savanna. In the ancient world, the margin between life and death was microscopic. Imagine you possess exactly enough food to survive for the next 3 days, and an opportunity presents itself to hunt a dangerous animal. If you succeed, you gain an extra week's worth of food. Your life doesn't change much. You are already going to survive. The game just offers a slight increase in comfort. But look at the downside. If you take the risk and lose the food you currently have, you drop below the caloric baseline. You starve. Your genetic lineage is permanently erased. Because a loss meant absolute death, your brain evolved a highly aggressive alarm system called the amygdala. Over hundreds of thousands of years, the humans whose amygdalas screamed in terror at the prospect of losing anything were the humans who survived. But you do not live in a cave anymore. You live in a complex, global capitalist economy. The problem is, your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a physical threat and a financial threat. When you look at your investment portfolio and see it has dropped 5%, your nervous system floods with cortisol. It screams that you are losing resources and going to die. When retail investors violently panic sell at the exact bottom of a crash, they aren't executing a financial strategy. They are executing a primitive survival reflex. This biological survival reflex is the exact reason 99% of people remain trapped in the illusion of a safe corporate job. The salary guarantees there is no volatility, which keeps the amygdala calm. But look at the architecture in this network graph. Mathematically, the corporate job is the most dangerous structure possible. If you are an employee, you have exactly one client. It is a single point of failure. If that one client fires you, your revenue drops instantly from 100% to absolute zero. You have zero control and unmitigated risk. Now contrast this with the mathematical architecture of the elite entrepreneur. The entrepreneur builds a business distributed across 50 different clients. While this model creates monthly income volatility, if one client leaves, revenue only drops by 2%. They have 49 other nodes supporting the infrastructure. The 99% choose the corporate job because it feels emotionally safe, while the 1% choose entrepreneurship because it is mathematically robust. To transition into the 1% mind, you must replace your emotional response with cold mathematics. You must learn the concept of expected value. Imagine you have the opportunity to spend $10,000 to build and market a software prototype. Market research shows an 80% chance the product completely fails, and a 20% chance it generates $100,000 in net profit. This ledger calculates the expected value. You multiply the win probability by the size of the win, and the loss probability by the size of the loss. When you subtract the two, the result is a positive $12,000. The 1% completely ignore the 80% chance of failure. They do not care about the emotional fear. They instantly execute because the math dictates a positive return over time. This is asymmetric risk, finding opportunities where the worst-case scenario is strictly capped, but the upside is mathematically uncapped. You are risking 1x to potentially make 1,000x. In the game of wealth, losing capped amounts is just the necessary fee you pay to sit at the table where massive outcomes are distributed. You force your brain to pull the trigger by implementing the 3-step asymmetric risk protocol. Step 1. Define the absolute floor. Fear thrives in ambiguity. When you are terrified of a financial risk, your brain hallucinates a vague nightmare of starving. You must drag those fears into the harsh light of reality. Use this template to calculate your risk floor. By inputting your liquid capital against the cost of the experiment and your minimum monthly burn rate, you prove to your brain that your survival is not threatened. For most professionals, the literal worst-case scenario is just a bruised ego and a return to the exact corporate job they are currently living. Step 2. The inversion of regret. You must weaponize loss aversion against itself by focusing on the loss of opportunity. Project 10 years into the future. Imagine you played it safe. Now imagine the suffocating agony of watching a peer with half your intelligence take the risk you avoided and build a massive empire. The pain of a temporary financial loss fades in months. The psychological agony of massive regret lasts a lifetime. Choose the pain of risk over the pain of regret. Step 3. Micro-exposure and amygdala desensitization. You must build risk tolerance through progressive overload. Start with an asset inventory. Liquidate unused items to generate emotion-free capital. This creates a pool of money that has zero impact on your actual survival. Take that money and make tiny asymmetric bets. Run a $100 ad test. Pay $50 to automate a data scraper. Isolate the capital. Mentally write it off to zero immediately. Then execute the test. When the test fails, sit physically with the anxiety. Notice your heart rate spike. Then acknowledge that you are still breathing and safe. Voluntary exposure to small losses slowly severs the false biological link between your bank account and your survival instinct. The elite do not build walls to eliminate risk. They measure it to capture significant asymmetric returns. But mastering fear is only step 1. Even with an elite psychological framework, you are still limited by the constraints of your own time. In our next video, we examine the asymmetry of leverage. I will show you exactly how billionaires decouple their income from their time using code, media, and capital. If this video gave you the courage to take a calculated risk, hit the like button, subscribe to the 1% Mind, and share this with a friend who is letting their potential rot in a savings account. Stop playing not to lose. Start playing to win.